Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Maharat Logistics webinar on Skilling Omani workforce to compete globally. This is Tahar Al-Bushi, your MC for today's webinar session. We're getting ready. Just stay there for a few minutes. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. This webinar is brought to you by Maharat Academy, supported by OLA, Oman Logistics Association, and CILT, the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, and our digital media partner is Imagine Oman. The webinar is going to focus on the post-COVID-19 situation, changing word, the new normal elements of professionalism. Maharat is an Omani-funded training business, which means that we are 100% geared to in-country values with Omanization at the heart of our agenda. Maharat's main purpose is skilling the Omani workforce to become globally competitive. Maharat designs, develops, and delivers tailor-made and measurable solutions for clients in the public and private sectors in Oman. Maharat provides itself in delivering training solutions to local. Have covered the introduction. We would like to get into the webinar session, but before that, I would like to brief you all a little on the webinar housekeeping rules so we all do not experience any hiccups. Here are the following housekeeping rules. The following housekeeping rules. Attendees, your mics are muted to avoid any interruption for the panelists. The moderator and panelists will be taking center stage on the webinar. If you have any feedback or suggestion, please feel free to send via the chat. Raise hand button will enable us to allow you to talk upon the raise of hands. Please note that it will be at the discretion of the host to allow talking and lower hands. When allowed to speak, please be ready with your mic on. Submit your questions to Q&A session. We are also live streaming the webinar on YouTube for members who are not able to attend the webinar. Kindly be informed that we will not be able to respond to your queries through the YouTube channel, but please feel free to leave your suggestions and feedback, and we will respond to it later. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our honorable guest who will take this webinar session forward. Starting with our moderator of the session, Mr. Maharat Al-Kharousi, Chairman CILT Oman, or as we know him in the industry as the father of logistics. Our valued panelists today are from different reputed business verticals in the logistics industry. Mr. Abdul Malik Al-Blushi, CEO Oman Post, Mr. Keith Newton, Secretary General, CILT International. We have here, so Dr. Sheikha Shiyadi, Head OLA Logistics Skills Unit, and Mr. Raed Al-Jabri, Institute Director, Maharat Academy. It gives me a great pleasure to hand over the session to our moderator, Mr. Maharat Al-Kharousi.
Thank you, Tahra, for the excellent introduction. Hi, everyone, and hope that everybody is keeping safe and healthy. Let us all keep to these new norms. We need to survive this pandemic so that we can actually go towards doing our business post-COVID. So my name is Maharat Al-Kharousi, as Tahra told us, and I'm wearing a different hats. Today, I'm actually wearing the hat of the chairman, CILT Oman, and many other hats as well. But for today, I think we'll keep it with the CILT Oman. I'm very honored to moderate this panel today of experts here, very, very deep insights and very experienced people. So inshallah, we'll get a lot of insight from them and see how Oman can actually skill its people to become globally competitive and what is needed to be done. So basically the topic today, the discussions will go around skilling Omani workforce. And why should Oman want to skill its people to compete globally? Very simply, the reason is that if we have to diversify and we have to compete globally, we need our people to be very, very competitive as well. And therefore, we can actually diversify from the oil-dependent economy to something that logistics, I think, can play a huge role here in Oman. It's probably the second biggest thing after the oil and gas. So logistics has a high potential, and training people and skilling people in the logistics sector is a way out from this oil-dependent economy. Oman, as you know, has a great ambition to become the logistics hub, not only for the Middle East, but globally. And if you look at the Indian Ocean Rim now, the biggest dry dock in the Indian Ocean Rim is in Oman. And we hope in the next 10 to 20 years, we'll be the Singapore of Oman, just with our Duqm port. We actually have 3 excellent ports right now. We have the Port of Salalah, which is a transshipment center. Duqm port is coming in very much industrial and oil storage port. And then also we have the Port of Sohar, which is the food hub of the Middle East, and becoming a food hub for the Middle East. And through this COVID-19, it's been utilized a lot in terms of supplies to the GCC, etc. So it's crucially important that we have competitive, skilled people, and these people also as well can be exported to our region in Saudi and a few other places. So therefore, it's an export potential of our human resource. What I'd like to do is share with you a slide where it actually centers with people, processes, and technology. Like all these things in life, if you have an organization, if you have a community, you have a country, you have an institution, it's all about people at the end. We can have processes, we can have technologies, but without having the right people to do the right thing, it becomes very difficult for us to compete. And we know now, for instance, this COVID-19 pandemic has made us feel, I would say, left out because something came overnight and we had to adapt to the new world. And that new world can only be adapted by how people work, how can they be creative in doing things, how can they adapt to the new norm. And that's been very crucial for the adaptation and surviving through this pandemic. So it is important that at the center of it, people need to be trained well, skilled well, work well with others. They have to have problem-solving skills, etc. And this actually drives the whole organization. Processes are there, but they're static. Processes change, is how people change them. Technologies need to be adapted, but who adapts them is the people. So with these 3 elements of professionalism, I would like each of our panelists to go through this and put this in the centerpiece and then go through with it. So I would like to start with Lakh Abdul Malik. He's the CEO of Oman Post. And Abdul Malik, if I pull you in now to go through this, how does your organization take the transition? And I know for sure you, for the last 3-4 years, you've been taking your organization from that traditional sort of organization posting letters to the e-commerce world. So it's not about the COVID-19 issue, that's why you're changing, but you've done this journey in the last 3-4 years. So can you just tell us what transformational elements you've taken on, number one, and number two, how was it accelerated through this COVID-19 pandemic?
Thank you, Maharat. Thank you for having me. Okay, I think a very interesting question. We had a very, I probably would say, a very rewarding journey in the past 4 years. And if you allow me, I'm gonna just use, since I told you yesterday, you guys need to be very careful talking about slides because I'm gonna come up with slides now. So we did prepare something very quickly, and I think it's good for everyone since One is telling the story is better with visuals and with numbers than just simply talking about it. But also on the other side, there is vested interest by everyone in this company. You know, it's a public company. It touches people's lives. We know today postal operators or postal sector across the globe is a key element in the success of e-commerce. So just let me take you through very quickly through some of the numbers that indicate the growth that we've seen in the past 4 years. And then we'll talk about what have we done. And meanwhile, probably I'll explain also part of the journey. But also I'll talk about the recent times and where we should be focusing and what's happening with Oman Post. I'll talk as I go through, I'll talk about e-commerce and the whole world of e-commerce, but just to set the scene. Postal in general, postal operators across the globe, they've been facing difficulties in the past 20, 30, 40 years because post was being disrupted like any other business. Of course, post was in the middle of disruption, and it was the one that was faster to be disrupted because of the development in technology and banking. And that caused a huge decline in the postal business. Companies, operators across the globe, they took different strategies. There were postal operators that they expanded internationally in adjacent markets, like for example, in logistics and CEP, courier, parcel, and express. For example, Deutsche Post invested in DHL International. We've got regional players similar to this setup. For example, La Poste, they own DPD, which is an express regional player. Japan Post is one of the largest employer in Japan. They've invested in a bank, so they have Japan Bank, and they have Japan Insurance Company. So different operators took different strategies, either moving to adjacent or core business, improving their core, or moving to adjacent markets, or even moving to a new market that is supported by their retail footprint. For us, because we've started late, we've started the transformation, probably 2016 is not a good year to start because we started in the middle of it, but 2017 was the real transformation of Oman Post. Given the situation here, we have a great banking system, everyone is bankable. So we took a different approach. We said e-commerce, core and CEP, so courier, parcel, express, and the core postal are the focus of Oman Post. So some of the numbers we have in the past 4 years, what we've done is we moved Oman Post to a scattered, not properly set up operation. What we usually used to laugh about, and we used to say it's a campfire operation, to a well-oiled operation. Today, for example, one of our key products, which is the Express and in EMS, it has moved from 33.7% in 2018 to 98% in November 2019. And it's improving today. Normal mail has improved, parcels have improved. All our different types of products are between 85 to 98% success rate. So we've raised the standard of our operation. We have today established Etihad Express as a service of Oman Post to focus on e-commerce and the last mile delivery, CEP, not only domestically, but in the region. We have today, this company has somewhere around 400,000 customers, which is not something very small. Our Express, excuse me, I just removed this. We have, from an Express point of view, from destination point of view, we've moved from, this is just in 1 year, from ability to send Express items to 63 countries to 220 in 2019. So we cover most of the globe. And we have some competitive product from Postal Express. to Commercial Express. The Commercial Express reaches across the globe in 2 to 4 days, which is, from a standard point of view, is a premium product at a very competitive price. If we look at business excellence, we've started the journey of business excellence in 2019, and it was focused on improving customer experience and improving the quality of Oman Post, but also developing a culture of efficiency and effectiveness. You know, we've done so far 58 lean projects. We have 34 lean practitioners. Our customer happiness index that we measure in our branches have reached 83%, which is way, way above the average of the globe. We've received, you know, the Committed to Excellence Award from the European Quality Institute. Also, on the other side, if you look internally, you know, we've done a great project with Maharat, which was Bina. We have some of the transformational leaders today graduating from that program and contributing greatly to the business today. But also, we did not only focus on developing people, making them ready for the job, but also we've developed commercial capabilities that are directly linked to strategic goals. So we've created something called a corporate entrepreneurship program based on best practices, business development models that are used usually in VCs and VCs funds. So we had almost 8 projects in 2019 and 2020, and some of them are probably being taken up by SMEs that are spinned off Oman Post, and a lot of them are being developed now in Oman Post to become new products and creating new volume and new markets. Now, when we talk about Oman Post, we have to distinguish. We are not just a domestic operator. We are not a domestic company. We are a domestic operator and a company with an international reach. I've said earlier that we have 220 destinations that we reach, our express reaches, but also we connect Oman to the whole globe. We have 92 members, countries, operators in the Universal Postal Union. There are more than 600,000 postal offices across the globe. Our network today as a postal operator cannot be matched by any other commercial operator in the country. And this is the strength that Oman Post brings. We are deeply rooted. We are serving different segments. We've got government clients. This is until the end of 2019. We've got private sector clients. We also are able, digitally able to connect with digital platforms and serve digital platforms. But also we do care about our social responsibility, and we do serve a lot of NGOs like Dar al-Ata and Jam'iyyat al-Rahma. Now, all that is what we've done in the past 4 years. And this is only a snippet, because I know I don't have a lot of time to talk about everything here. But then I want to pivot from that to today. So in 4 years, we focused in building trust in the organization, building trust with our customer, creating a well-oiled operation, and reinventing our products. So, some of the products, for example, are Majjar, IPEX, all these are new products. And we try to cater what the market needs. However, there's more now, our focus in product development and how can we respond faster to the market. Now, talking about those 4 years has a different, different impact on the organization and a different speed that you need to operate in, because you have time. But if I compare that with what's happening right now, there is a major shift on the way we think. Now, postal operators, postal in specific, is linked to airline movements. There is no airline movements, you don't have anything. And we are, in general, in GCC, we are 70% an inbound countries. معناها, it means that 70% of our volume comes from outside. There's only 30% that comes from domestic and outbound. So when there are no airlines, your whole 70% of your business is gone out of the wind. And that put us in a very big constraint. Plus the social distancing guidelines and instructions that came through this period have put us in a very tough situation, and we had to react very quickly. But just to put a bit of perspective, this is from Gartner. Now, I share the same view. As companies, we have to focus on the crisis and post-crisis future. And what usually the research says that usually the companies that are able to grow and improve their margins, they do these three things commonly. And this is exactly what we've done. So focus both on short term, but just don't focus on short-term operational planning, but also long-term operational planning, because whether we like it or not, this whole COVID-19, this whole situation is going to change the way the customers' behavior, is going to change the market conditions, is going to change the connectivity, is going to change where you source your material. Everything is going to change. Your whole supply chain is changing now. Organization also, they aim both on cost reduction and digitization, transforming the company during the downturn. And that's exactly what we've done. So giving you an example, when we faced with the decision of the committee that you need to shut all your service centers, so basically no international outbound, no service centers, that means the Oman Post stops. So what we've done is we've created this task force that needed to come up with a solution in 3 days. And they came with a digital solution ready to implement in 3 days. And we've created an online calendar, a booking system linked with our website that links the customer to all our branches across the country. And you can book a spot and you can go and be served outside the post office. That was one of the, we were fast in implementing, but also is thinking, how can we digitize some of our requirement to cope with the situation? In cost reduction, we have been, we in the past 4 years, we've reduced our fixed cost by 20%. But now we are even looking very deeply in cost reduction, given the whole situation. Third, companies, they maintain and adopt both aggressive and conservative strategies. Now, aggressive is how can we react to the market? Is it the right time to expand? And we are thinking, we are investing, for example, in Asad Express. We are investing heavily in improving our capacity, whether capacity in technology or in network. We're looking at it across the value chain, increase capacity so you can capture the market very quickly. We can see what's happening in the market with other operators where customers are really facing difficulty in being served. And what we are doing right now, we have an aggressive strategy of how can we create a substitute to those services? How can we come up with the new services, even in a downturn? So these are some of the aggressive strategies that we are looking at. But also on the other side, we're being very conservative in our strategy, looking at how we can maintain cost, how can we reduce cost, how can we become more efficient, where do we need to focus and where we need to relax. All these are being looked at. Now, in this context, if we think of what do we need from a people point of view, now we all know that organizations to grow, or to survive in this, in this situation, what do we need? Usually, you need two specific resources, two constraints that stop organization from growing. One is financial, the other one is people. And since we are a service industry, people are a major contributor to our success and our growth. And if we look at what's happening right now, there are key areas that just pop up and they are evident. One is we need to help the organization to become more flexible and cope with the market. Your long-term planning has to become much more shorter planning within a long-term scheme. Those are capabilities that you need to develop, and you need to prepare your people. And the digitization, the whole concept of how can you fast move and create you know, whether through the digitalization process or through your business development process, you have to be fast, you know, and we all know big does not beat small. Fast beats slow. And that's where should be also the focus. And that's what we need to, you know, develop. There is also, just the last point, Warat, and I think these are the two things, but also there is a point of post, you know, your focus capability should be both, again, as we said, short-term and long-term. A lot of companies, they just focus today to get out of this, but they also should be looking how they can do proper planning post this event. I hope I've shed a good, I set a good scene for the discussion.
Yes.
But again, I leave the rest of the panelists.
Yeah, I think that was a fantastic insight, and thank you very much, Abdul Malik. It is very, very insightful. I think you've talked very much of what is needed in terms of people focus and leadership requirements. And as far as I'm concerned, you have shown that you are one of the leaders in logistics here in Oman. And with that transformational journey that you have put in and the people that you've actually homegrown within your unit. One last thing, which before I get to the Keith here, is that it's important that we now need to shift the focus on training on its own right, but into training within the organizations. I think you mentioned that. And that fast tracking of getting people from training into the work site and really work on with their hands on is a huge difference. And I think the experience between yourselves and Maharat was that within 3 months or so from graduation, they really need to get their hands into the organization and start doing sort of benefit the organization and gain from their sort of efforts. So thank you for that. This is a good time now to bring in Keith, actually. Keith, the question I ask is that you've seen the challenges and the pace of Oman Post, and thank you, Abdul Malik, to tell us that we can actually be almost proud of it, that it's now going to 220 countries they're serving. So I think this is a fantastic shift in the last few years. What can you create value for us as CILT International with a global experience of 100 years or more and into Oman Logistics Association? And maybe you can tell us a bit your strategic, what do you call it, partnership with Oman Logistics Association. And then we'll take from you to Dr. Sheikha after that. Could you make it a bit more briefer than Abdul Malik?
Sorry.
I will, but yeah, no, thank you, Warith, and thank you, Abdul Malik. That was very interesting hearing about Oman Post, so time well spent. And I'll pick up some of those themes now, Warith. I was first in Oman in 2012, meeting Warith, actually, and that's where when we set up CILT in Oman. So thank you very much for inviting me here. I would have hoped to be in person, but Zoom is nearly as good. As Warith said, we're very excited. 6 months ago, we signed the partnership with the Oman Logistics Association to continue to develop CILT and our relationship with professionals in the country. And the webinar today will build on that, I'm sure. So just a little bit in terms of CILT and who we are, fits remarkably in the theme that both Warith and Abdul Malik mentioned, which is people. So we are a people organization. I've been a member of the Institute for 35 years, and the last 8 of those I've been privileged to lead the organization globally. We had our 100 years anniversary in November 2019, and that was a remarkable, when we look back, a remarkable period of time as an institute. We're now in 36 countries, but importantly, you need to build on that base, and that takes us, I think, into many of the themes for today, particularly with COVID-19 being our challenge for the new century. One of the first webinars that we delivered, one of our speakers mentioned, I'm sure a number of you have heard this before, but the Chinese word for crisis has two characters in it. One is danger and one is opportunity. And as Abdul Malik mentioned, every business, every person in the supply chain needs to look at both from a personal angle and from a business angle. So not only looking at cost and finance, but also looking at aggression and challenge and opportunity. And one of the great things I think about the opportunity is collaboration in the current environment. There are many changes happening, and it's very important for us as an institute to work collaboratively in the region with this theme of people, partnership and leadership in the current crisis. How will we do that? Just quickly, this slide, there's a lot in it, but for us, we've got a very strong focus in the Middle East. It's the theme that you as a nation have got in terms of equipping your people, particularly your younger people, in logistics and supply chain skills is absolutely aligned to our goals as an organization. And we've been working hand in hand with Maharat since 2015. And there's great opportunities now in the Omaniization program to continue to do that. We've got regional expertise. So I know on the call, there's a few from Saudi, where in the last 6 months, we've grown the program. So many areas with online and building partnerships, and with in Saudi government funding for our certificate programs, we're growing, doubling, trebling the numbers who are taking that program, equipping young people in Saudi. And that's enabling us to build on our core skills, which are international qualifications, and taking them into other languages. We're doing that also in Central Asia. So for you in Oman, I think, and for us in CILT, it's working more in terms of partnership on our programs and working with you to fill those skills gaps, which undoubtedly exist not only in the region, but globally. And that's our understanding and our knowledge in terms of huge skills gaps, both at people who are joining the industry and at a managerial level later on, the more experienced people. So thank you for inviting me. I'm sure there's going to be more discussion and interest about this whole topic of people. But I'll hand back to Warith now to take us further forward this afternoon.
Thank you, Keith, and thank you for keeping it sharp. I think this aligns very well now with Dr. Sheikha at what she's doing as the skills unit of the logistics, which is also connected to the Ministry of Manpower, etc., in terms of how to align skills to the jobs and also certify them. So I think you're very much in an alignment there. So, Doctora, if you can give us a bit of insight, what is the logistics skills unit actually doing at this moment in time, and where you are in that sort of journey, and when are we going to see probably some outputs from the skills unit?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much, Mr. Warith, for the introduction. And I'm really honored and pleased to be with such experts here in the field. So before talking about the sector skill unit here, I'm going to give like a brief background about, just a minute, about the skill development in Oman. Okay, so as many countries in the world, diversification of economy is a priority. And Oman has announced that, of course, in Vision 2020 and then Vision 2040. Of course, there is a focus on certain industries like logistic, tourism, mining, and agriculture. And there is a huge need for a skilled and trained manpower to serve in these industries. Prior research, unfortunately, indicated that there is a mismatch between the industry and also the training and the education. And also there is much focus on the theoretical knowledge in the school rather than the practical knowledge. And also the employers are not really pleased with the outcomes of the schools as they don't have the required skills. With the recognition of these issues in terms of labor market, the government has delivered many initiatives. And I'm going to focus here on the initiative that has led to the establishment of sector skill units. The initiative started with the TNFEED, the National Program for Embracing the Economic Diversity, and then this has led to the establishment of Occupational Standards Center. It's under the Ministry of Manpower, and this, the center is responsible for developing a sustainable skill development system in Oman. And it's also managing and licensing and support operations of sector skill units. Sector skill units are employer-led organizations, and for these to be led by employer, OSC seeks sectoral association to host such units. And in case of logistics, we have Oman Logistic Association, which is the voice of the industry and links the industry with the government and also contributes to the development of the workforce in the logistic industry. So then the sector unit has a great contribution and for the development of the trained and skilled manpower in the industry. Sector skill units are created to give a voice for the employer. And in order to skill, as the topic of our webinar is in order to skill the Omanis to be globally competitive. I'm going to go back to what Mr. Abdul Malik mentioned, that the operations are changing now in Oman Post, and there is a need for people who have skills in planning, problem solving, have commercial capabilities, and in order for, of course, SSU is created to help and support the industry in delivering such, workshop for the industry. So if we have a look at this skill development cycle here, we are focusing on two main things. The first one is the occupational map, where we work with the industry to define the sector, define the occupations in the sector, define the job roles, and these are developed by SSU and then validated by the industry and then approved by the government, and here the Occupational Standard Center. And the second thing we are doing here, the labor market intelligence, where we research the skill gap in terms of demand and supply, and this for better decision making, nationally. And then comes the national occupational standards, and these are the performances, or they specify the performances of an individual in terms of skill and knowledge in a specific job role. So once we develop these national occupational standards, and then we get approval from the government, these are translated to programs and curricula, where we provide training providers and also the higher education institutes with these standards, and they will have to comply with these standards. And then we have, of course, the assessment, the certification. We plan and execute trainers, and we build accreditation and affiliation process for the institutes. So sector skill unit basically increasing, aim to increase the transparency in the sector, ensure that the skill gap is reduced by working closely with the industry, and also we have given the opportunity to unemployed youth to develop a clear career path in the future. So this is basically about the sector skill unit and its role in skills development in Oman.
Thank you very, very much, Doctor. I think you've really shown us a bit deep insight in how you're going about the skill development. We also had a question some time before about competence development and how do we align it. I think you've answered it very well here. So thank you for that. And I think maybe with the time also limited, let's go towards the training organizations like Maharat. How do they respond to all these needs of the industry, the alignment with the Skills Council, and you name it? So I think if I can throw the floor to Raid in a few minutes.
Yeah.
But to keep it within 5 minutes, please, because we would like to take some questions before we close.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. First of all, thank you for the opportunity today. And I would like to, to take this grateful opportunity and thank also the panelists because, there's an advantage of coming in last because what I have to do is just duplication of whatever is happening. Actually, it's not a duplication. It's more like a shared vision or a shared value that we already kind of repeatedly saying it, which is people and people capacities and people competencies and skilling people. So I think we are very much aligned into the sort of human capability, into driving the businesses, driving the vision, driving our missions as well. Just not to reinvent the wheel, what we actually do in Maharat is, as a training provider, we believe into listening the requirements from the end users or the clients, or actually being the employers, what we call in the market, and then kind of getting the right alignment into working with different expertise. And what we actually do here is identifying the requirements, identifying the sectors or the sort of the impact that we want to actually sort of transfer and take it forward with, and work with an international sort of accreditation, the body itself, and get that alignment as well to a sort of national capacity or a national occupational standard. So we're kind of the glue, working with the expertise, identifying the requirements, and actually coming into a framework, which I've heard some of the training providers call it best practices, but I was restricted not to use this word. I'm going to go with future practices, because there's always an advanced way of actually coming in with your curriculum, the syllabus, and developing the best practices currently to satisfy current needs in whether to push us in the near future and actually push the industry to the next levels as well. Again, because of the time is a factor, I'm just going to walk you through, just simply 3 slides that I've prepared today. Simply, our model is like 70-20-10. This is our learning model. This is what we've been practicing, implementing with Maharat. This is our culture. This is the ultimate belief. This is what we're actually aspired with. 10%, it's understood. It's the physical contact, is the sender receivers sort of interrelation, my knowledge being an instructor, trainer, lecturer, an educator, you name it, sending it to the receiver being the learner and the student, for example. So there's a theory part of it. There is some elements that we cannot actually deny. We need to understand, we need to sort of embed new concepts within our character, within our learning journeys, etc. We go to the 20%. Why am I saying learning through others? We all understand the importance of it, because For example, and this is what happens with Maharat, as a learning atmosphere, we might have just a high level example. We'll have somebody from the aviation and one from logistics and the third person from oil and gas and the fourth person maybe from the telecom. So learning from others, that kind of knowledge sharing, because at the end of the day, the basic fundamentals of the 10% would be exactly the same. But the 20% is always the peer-to-peer reflection. So we always believe that please continue learning from others. Go and have the focus groups, have different activities that you may actually kind of get something, that additional mile within added value to your knowledge. 70% is the ultimatum. We've actually designed most of our programs with a TFE element. TFE is also a focus that we have, is training for employment. So most of our frameworks, in order for us to develop a professional, he or her have to go through the TFE programs, which means training for employment. I would like to just go back to Mr. Abdul Malik and the program that he mentioned. It's one of the signature programs that we had actually a couple of years ago, when we actually dealt with, again, diversified graduates, people coming from different disciplines, engineering school, business and arts, you name it. And we actually design a program that we can speak to the youth and tell them, like, listen, it's time that we do a mindset switch. It's time that we take an already established brand, but how can you anticipate into the changed vision that they have? So we worked with the sector closely. Again, we worked with the client. We worked again with the future employer by identifying these kind of requirements and to kind of relate into the sensitive areas and how can we actually engineer the best solution to them. And I believe by today that we've heard some blessings from Mr. Abdul Malik himself by saying there are some value added, and this is the main purpose. We don't just train, we train to retain. So, and we train to live, to give some time to the talent to get that real sort of exposure to the business and actually reacting to the requirements. So Maharat continue into believing, because we had to revisit our business model. We're still focused in TFE, that's at the area. Again, employability standards, and then we're looking into the best practices or the future practices, and how can we actually embed these practices so we can have a guy, simply a man or a woman, or a young lady or a young man, ready-made, hitting the ground running from day one. SME development, just like a very small sort of input that we may actually contribute back to the economy. We all believe that the SME are the upcoming scale, which are going to actually elevate the economies. And what we did actually here, if we've designed programs to enable the SME, that sort of arena to excel and to go to the next level. And we worked very closely. We even called it in Arabic, Tasara. It's an accelerator program where we work closely with SMEs, understanding, identifying the requirements, going through the business model, the financial models, and how can we actually help them elevate and accelerate to the next level. And the most important thing is the end results of such a project. Last but not least, our focus area as a business model, again, is concentrating on platforms. As it was mentioned earlier, we had to evolve. And I believe each and every business right now and sectors, whether they're struggling, whether they're very relaxed, I'm not into that, but I'm just saying that we had to evolve, and partly we had to actually, sort of cope into designing our solutions and how can we continue the connection that we had with our client. And that's by having the online platforms, having the virtual solutions, and anything that can actually give us the continued development to the learners, to the end users, and to our clients as well. And we are already having some exercises with different accreditations body, the likes of CILT, CIPD, and SIPS as well. Last but not least, something was shared with one of my colleagues today morning. I just wanted to say, how are we actually anticipating this? There are a list of 10 actually skills which were identified as required. And they were actually required to survive the business, not just to sustain, even to survive the business. And these were actually identified by one of the resources. It's an international economic forum. So I think we should, this is just my final sort of word, is to look into the in-house capability that we have, the individuals, the people focus again. Critical thinking, problem solving, we do understand how they interact together. We need critical thinkers. We need people that are out of the box thinkers. We need people that could go that extra mile into identifying what are the key strengths. How can we capitalize in our in-house strength, etc. Problem solving, again, it's a suffer. We are all going through it. What is that one element that could actually add into contributing and adding value to the business model that we have? Even if it's on a division sort of scale, we don't have to go to the ultimatum sort of vision of the brand, but let us work it on sort of divisions level. Creativity, it's time that we think differently. It's time that we evolve. It's time that we actually allow people to shine. I believe, I'm a very high believer of people coming from a background which is purely of human capital and HR resource and human resources sort of ability and competencies. There is a creative person that we have. It's just the time to allow them to speak and to come front, and it's time that they actually would produce and start giving us the net results. Leadership
right.
and
in view of time, we're almost up to the hour.
Okay.
The last slide. I think it's clear from the what you're concentrating on.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that everybody is on the same page. We would like to wrap up in the next 2 minutes or so. What we're not going to do is go away. We have quite a number of questions. Those who are busy and want to move to somewhere else, that's fine. We can go for that. It will be all on YouTube. Okay, so whatever it is. What we'll do a quick wrap up for 2 minutes, so that on the hour we've completed the webinar. But we will step back, and I'm going to ask our panelists to step back another 10-15 minutes, just to pick up the questions that came through. We've got almost 14 questions here. So we don't want to ignore them totally. They've spent one whole hour waiting to listen and ask the questions. So we will choose a few of them. We may not answer all the 14 questions, but at least we pick up, and some of them are actually repetitive. So we'll pick up a few, and let's stay back, panelists, if you don't mind. I believe Abdul Malik can give us another 10-15 minutes, and the doctor and Keith and Raid. Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Okay, no problem.
So in that case, please, Raid, if you can just wrap up, and then, but please make it in 2 minutes.
Sweet, short, and simple, inshallah.
Yeah.
I was speaking about leadership and people management again, and trustworthy.
No. Please, Raid. Just.
Yeah.
Closing slides, because this we've already gone through. Let's go through.
This is actually my last slide.
I think there's a closing slide, but I think what's her name was going to put up.
Okay. Then that's it.
Okay, right. Great. The host, Taharia.
Yes. Yeah, it's here. So now we're moving to Q&A session. Thank you for the engaging closing slides.
I think so.
Yeah, okay, then let's move to the closing slides. So I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of Maharat to thank you, our valued panelists, and all you wonderful attendees for taking time out for your busy schedules to join this webinar. I hope you found this session interesting and informative. We value your opinion, and we would like to request you all to please vote on the opinion pool that is up on the screen. Thank you. We hope to bring you more interesting webinar topics in the future. Speaking of the future, please note and book your calendar for our upcoming webinar session and our ongoing training courses. Please feel free to register for our courses through our website, www.maharat.com. Once again, we thank you all. This was Tahar Al-Blushi. Enjoy the rest of the day and stay safe.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Are we going to get the polling answers?
All right.
We're told that the host and panelists cannot vote, so I cannot vote. Right. Oh, that's really good. Nice. I like that actually. Thank you all for making the poll. I see that entrepreneurship skills for SMEs is coming up at the high on the agenda. And I'm probably not too surprised because I think to work for employers now is probably the old way, traditional way. People want to do their own thing now. And so this is something that we can pick up and understand. But of course, there's a few things on professional development, I think comes close to second. So definitely we are still in business, but I think we'll have to think about our SME training a little more faster and adaptive, because that's probably the one that is really needed. So apart from that, now let's go a bit on the questions, if you don't mind. We'll take a couple of questions. Let's see here. Panelists, you have got some questions on your screen. Would any of you want to pick up one of those to talk about? Or should I find you something that I can? Anyway, let me try this one. This is from Can, Senior Lecturer in Logistics and Supply Management from Muscat University. Is there any platform that we can come together with the industry people to match the gap in the industry through our own courses that can be undergraduates, postgraduates, or maybe executive programs? I don't know. Who should take this?
I think you should take this.
Okay. Yeah, I think first of all, it's very relevant. It's a very good question. I think we ought to have the platforms. I think at this moment in time, we do have a gap between the industry, between the institutions, the educational institutions, and there's a huge mismatch of what the industry requires and what the higher education actually churns out. And institutes like us, Maharat, we've been trying to bridge the gap in between. So yes, I think the question is a very good question. We ought to have a platform, maybe such as this platform today, to discuss the alignments and what is needed, what can be done. And I remember actually talking a little bit with Abdul Malik before this discussion here. He clearly says that things will change dramatically post-COVID. And if you talk about the educational institutions like Muscat University, Sultan Qaboos University, their curriculums are designed for three, four years, and they're very difficult to change overnight. So it is important that we become a bit more adaptive to the new world, and take it from there. So the answer is yes. I think there should be a platform.
There are, Warith, I mean, I would encourage particularly the students to engage with things like LinkedIn, Facebook, aging and link with not just fellow students, but professionals. We have a number of platforms that we actively use as an institute. So again, you can engage potentially through the Oman Logistics Association into CRT and use some of those platforms. We've got very active next generation young professional platforms going. So maybe we can look to help support that in Oman as well. So.
Right. Yeah, thanks for that, Keith. These are the initiatives I think we're going to look at and work with. So I'll be more than happy, anybody who's interested in this kind of areas, to join up and discuss. We'll try to find a platform of some sort that we can all talk about. Have you got any ideas, Abdul Malik or Doctora?
I think Dr. Sheikh probably would be in a good position to answer. Yeah.
This is really interesting, and I think there will be a platform, but because the sector skill unit started only early this year, it's started in February, so it's been like 5 months, and we've been really working really hard to at least, you know, start working with the occupational Maharat standards in order for us to have this platform, you know, like for the public. But also because of the crisis, COVID-19, you know, like, and we hope that we will have a platform by 2021, inshallah. So I think this is, you know, like things that in our mind, and it will be implemented by next year.
Yeah. Right. There is a question here for Dr. Sheikha, and if I can ask you, Dr. Sheikha. This is from Sarab Negi, Dr. Sarab Negi. I would like to ask that which specialized specific skills do you think is highly required to enhance Oman logistics sector? Number 2 question is how these can be developed and achieved, and so forth. It's from Modern College, by the way.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. And I think Mr. Raed put a slide where he mentioned something about the type of skills needed for the sector, and also Mr. Abdul Malik also mentioned about the transformational leaders that are needed for the future. And as I mentioned, you know, like, because we are establishing the labor market intelligence now, and which will study about the skills in the sector, this will give us a clear idea about the current and future skills. So what is, you know, like the specific skills needed? I think the industry leaders can answer the question for now. And once we get the data, it will be shared for the public. Yeah. But as Mr. Abdul Malik mentioned, problem solving, critical thinking, customer service oriented, and also commercial capabilities. This is also something that myself I'm learning today. So how can these skills be achieved? This is, as I said, once we finish the national occupational standards, these will be translated to curricula and programs. So any program, you know, comes from any training provider or higher education institute in Oman has to be approved by the sector skill unit. So it has to you know, represent or the skills that needed by the industry. So I hope this answered the question.
Thank you for that. But another good question here from Ahmed Rawahi. Do you think there are plenty of generic skills should be taught in schools and colleges levels? So not occupational institutes such as problem solving, communication skills, etc. I personally feel, I think personally, these skills should be built in the early stages of schools, where especially skilled occupational institutes should provide the skills that needed for the certain sector. I think this is a question that, I don't know who would like to pick this up, but maybe Keith here, you may want to say something about early age sort of skills before even going to colleges.
Yes. I mean, I think there's not many countries that do this well, actually, in education. There's initiatives that have been taken in some countries, but the logistics tends to be a forgotten profession in schools, largely. That's my experience globally. There's not, as I say, there's not many countries where that's different. I think it's different slightly in countries where logistics is, like Hong Kong, Singapore, where logistics is a very key profession and well known. But I certainly think there needs to be more done. I don't know the situation in Oman at all, so I can't speak from a school's situation in Oman, but to get young people involved in understanding logistics early is very important.
Great. There's also another great question here from Ali Abdul Hussein. I'd like to say, so he said, thank you for the presentation, very insightful. There are few options for entrepreneurs to seek support, including Maharat, Logistics.com, and others. How does a student entrepreneur compare or choose which ones are the most relevant to develop the relevant skills? Maybe the question I'll throw here to Abdul Malik, I think you have a better feel about where these students have to go and find such skills.
He's talking about someone who wants to be an entrepreneur in logistics. I think that's what I understood.
Yes, probably, yes.
Look, the trend we've seen, and I think, you know, probably I want to also shed light on some of the, I've read some of the questions and some of them already been answered, but we all know for a fact, and this is a fact that we cannot just simply, you know, avoid or disqualify. The whole world is changing. Our education systems are lagging behind. Now, you know, we've been teaching people, whether that's in early school or university, different skills. The working environment today, we know for a fact that whoever comes out of the education system is not ready for the job. And that's why we have to invest in reskilling them to be job ready. So competencies that are, you know, the problem solving or critical thinking, or other, you know, interpersonal skills. Looking at that and looking at how the whole globe is shaping into, for example, AI, robotics, all this digital transformation that are happening around the globe, the fourth industrial revolution, all this is going to impact how people are going to, you know, how they're going to find jobs. A lot of people lose jobs. Their new jobs will come up. And we all know that new jobs are more focused. The skills you need to focus are more on the softer side, like emotional intelligence, like critical thinking, problem solving, that cannot be solved or they cannot be, you know, fulfilled by technology. Now, in this context, whether you are skilling someone for the job or yourself, you want to skill yourself in entrepreneurial skills, you need to understand what's happening in the globe. And you have to start thinking as an entrepreneur. In my personal view, your entrepreneurial skills are more important than any other functional skills. So when you look at an entrepreneur, in my personal view, you are a CEO. When you are a CEO, your conceptual skills, so your helicopter view, understanding the big picture, your capability, for example, to understand very complex situations, making decisions in vague situations. All these competencies are very important. Your functional skills are not very important. You know, you can always bring someone to understand how logistics works, or you can actually read about logistics and understand how logistics works. But your conceptual skills and your behavior skills and how you act as a leader, how you lead yourself, how you lead teams, how you lead value for your company and customers. These are the most important skills that you need to understand. And again, of course, you need to understand some of the key ingredients. You know, you need to understand what does marketing means to your business, how do you read financial reporting. These are the basic skills for an entrepreneur. So you need to equip yourself around these competencies. Now, are they available? They are available online. You can, I'm sure Maharat will have a good entrepreneurial program that you can join. But remember that for any industry, your capability as a leader is the most important thing. Whether you are a domestic or a global player, you need to develop those capabilities.
Great. Thank you for that, Abdul Malik. Another question here from an anonymous attendee. What advice can you give upcoming fresh graduates to gain experience at a time like this in order to enhance their CVs?
Train.
It's a good time now to learn new skills. Dr. Sheikha, maybe you'll take this one.
Mr. Abdul Malik is not going to say anything about it?
No, I think I've said enough, but I'll give you a chance. I think you are much more, you are the experts in this than me.
Okay, I think part of our plan in the future, inshallah, for sector skill unit is to have like on-job to plan. Okay, the on-job training and also apprenticeship. Okay, it's not there yet for the logistics sector, but this is like one of the things that we gonna do. But for now, I guess like many universities, like based on my higher education background, many colleges, they have the theoretical and also the practical side of any topic or any subject. So if you are, for example, like one of the logistic colleges here, they have like the curricula and also the practical side where they send the students to some the sea or the ports or the warehouses. Okay, this is one thing. Okay, so if you are in one of the institutions, you will be able to do all of this. But if you are like only seeking to study logistics and you want to enhance your CV with some training, you can seek, of course, some of the companies here. And also, hopefully, in the future, we can be the connection or with the industry. So the students can come, or we can have it online where we can advertise some of the trainings in some companies, and then the students are able to go and have the training in these companies.
Yeah, thank you for that. And also I'd like to add on something a bit to Dr. Sheikh. I think the challenge at the moment is that most of the interns or opportunities, a lot of organizations don't take on. So what I see, what's going on, there's other organizations now are looking at online internship. For instance, the big four of the accounting firms are actually starting to advertise people online to help them and do things internship. So you look beyond the current scenario of being placed to a company, etc. I think now if you go online, if you start looking at opportunities for internship, people should be prepared in a different way now altogether, because even if you have to work for a company like Al Madina, etc., they won't be able to take you with the current social norms, and which is very difficult. So now let us turn a little bit more towards online, and I'm sure that could be the case. Now, let me not take any longer, because I think we've exhausted, well, not exhausted the questions, but I think all the time we've taken. We are beyond 20 minutes from what we are doing. What I'd like to do is wrap up for sure. We are always available. You can connect with any of us. I'm sure there's some emails. You can ask the webinar organizers to catch up with any of the panelists. So I'd like to thank, first of all, very much the audience. We still have around 70 around there, which is fantastic. We had almost 250 registrant today, and then later on they came up, and then basically where we are now. Everything is actually publicized on the YouTube, so people can catch up on the YouTube as well. And I'd like to really give a big thank to the panelists. You gave a fantastic insight to the industry here in Oman, to the skill development units such as CIOT and the local skills council here in Oman. And then, of course, Maharat is one of the training providers here in Oman. So I'd like to thank you all. If, without further ado, I'm sure there may be something behind somewhere I may have forgotten. I would like also to thank the organizers. I would like the supporters of Oman Logistics Association and also the CIOT for making this happen. Thank you very much all. And if I've forgotten anybody, please forgive me.